Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 219 of Respawning Fire, the irreverent gaming podcast from Affable Idiots. I am your co-host for the evening, Holden DePardo, but I'm also here with someone who's drinking Mountain Dew right now. Who's that drinking Mountain Dew?
Okay, first of all, I'm drinking Mountain Dew Zero Sugar. I'm going to die. Whoa, okay. Calm down, speaker. I'm going to die, but at least I'll die skinny. I'm just saying, I'm Chad Michael Innes. If nipple does not refer to the entire pepperoni and the nub, what do we call that now? There needs to be a word for the whole shebang on the tip of the boob.
And I'm just, if you say nipple, everyone knows what you're talking about.
But no one knows that I also include the succulus, or sulcus, the sulcus in there, which is the fold.
First of all, no one knows what the sulcus is anyway. We all just learned that together.
It's a Marvel villain.
But I feel like if you went to someone and you're like, oh, people have nipples, you'd be like, well, let's clarify here. Do you mean the succulus? Do you mean the areola? Do you mean a little nub? Like, which part are you talking about?
I'm going to start correcting other people. When people refer to the whole thing as the nipple, I'm going to be like, whoa. Do you mean the nipple, the sulcus, and the areola, as well as the Montgomery glands? Because you need to be specific.
You need to be specific here. If you want to listen to us talk about nipples, you can catch us on Twitch Sunday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you can't catch us then, you can go to YouTube and podcast services Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Upcoming, we'll be talking about shapes and sizes of nipples, just kidding. More Netflix games updates, EA announcements. But before all that, it's probably really bad we were talking about nipples.
Everyone has nipples, Holden.
First topic. This is true, but I don't know. It seems a little weird to go from nipples to the next story.
You're right.
Let's bring it down, because this is actually a serious story. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this, I think, but it's important to talk about this. It is it's a very serious issue. Anyone listening to this probably knows at this point that there was a lawsuit by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing against Activision for claims of sexual harassment, unequal pay, just basically unequal treatment of women in the workplace, which also includes harassment. So, first story here is Activision Blizzard sued by California over allegations of, quote, frat boy culture and sexual harassment. Quote was not saying, quote, like this exists, like, quote, they put quote in the headline, just to be perfectly clear. California Department of Fair Employment and Housing has been investigating work conditions at Activision Blizzard for 2 years now. Here are the allegations. There's discrimination against female employees regardless of their status in the company. This includes in compensation, in promotions, assignments, like what kind of projects they get to work on, as well as termination. Lower starting pay than the male employees is what we're kind of seeing with the compensation part. And when it gets to like behavior in the workplace, some of the male employees have been drinking copious amounts of alcohol and then walk about the office engaging in inappropriate behavior towards female employees. Even without the inappropriate behavior towards female employees, you should not be drinking copious amounts of alcohol at work. Especially when I don't know where they're drinking the alcohol, but if you're like on the development team, as someone who's been coding now for a few years, I can't imagine being like hammered and drunk and like trying to code something. Like I can't even. It's just bad practice to begin with, and also has that negative other part of it. The inappropriate behavior includes open graphic sexual banter, like about personal experiences or about comments on other female employees' bodies, and also rape jokes. A female employee committed suicide during a work trip after repeated ongoing harassment. So those are the major claims that the DFEH is written in their court documents. The DFEH hopes Activision Blizzard will offer new workplace protections and retroactively resolve pay disparities. Now, Activision Blizzard has made an official comment. They say that the allegations are distorted or false. During the investigation, Activision says they were cooperative, but was never informed what issues the DFEH was seeing, which Activision says the DFEH is legally required to do. They say this prevented them from adequately handling any of these issues before being sued. Activision also notes that the suicide of a female employee is unrelated to the issues that they are being sued for. Over the past few years, Activision claims they have been actively working on resolving these issues on their own. Strict non-retaliation focus and better channels for reporting misbehavior. So they have the ASK, actually ASK, I think I misspelled that, ABK, yeah. ABK list. ABK list, which is a confidential integrity hotline. They have an employee relations team for investigating misconduct, and then they also say they have regular anti-harassment training. That's the story from IGN there. Jason Schreier, who is always, able to chime in stories like this. This is kind of his specialty. He, got emails that were from certain leaders at Activision, towards just the whole team, the whole company.
Got emails, not like they sent him an email or like they were leaked emails?
Oh, I think they were leaked emails. I think it was like sent to the whole
not
company.
Addressed to Jason.
I don't think so, but that's actually a good question to bring up. It's possible. I don't know. I don't want to say for certain. The first one is from J. Allen Brack, who is the Blizzard president. And just to kind of paraphrase what he said he can't make official comments on the investigation because it's still open, but he denounces any harassment and misconduct. He wants employees to know that equality is important and leadership is listening with an open door. If someone doesn't feel comfortable and prefers to be anonymous, he offers an anonymous hotline to call, which is actually different than the APK one. It's something else. It's like Way Go Forward or something like that. He says he also said that Gloria Steinem is a hero of his, which is a really fucking weird thing to say in that statement. It doesn't matter.
The equivalent of I have a black best friend, so I can say things. It's by the way, I also love this woman, therefore we can't be misogynistic.
Yeah, it reminded me of specifically of that scene in Get Out where the dad looks at the boyfriend and says, "Oh, by the way, I voted for Obama twice, and I would have voted for him a third time." It's like,
yeah.
What? Like, why are you telling me that? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I also just want to mention he has two things here. One, he denounces harassment and misconduct, and then right after that, there's leadership is listening with an open door. Like, obviously, there's harassment. Obviously, there's misconduct. You're obviously not listening with your open door.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. How can you say those two things back to back? It's so stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. The second email is from Fran Townsend, who joined Activision in March this year as the Chief Compliance Officer and the executive sponsor of ABK Women's Network. Her statement, or her email, covers a lot of the same ground as the official statement, which isn't surprising considering she's probably leading the team that wrote that statement to begin with. But she said that the ABK list, the employee relations team, but also like how the lawsuit's distorted and untrue and irresponsible. She talked about all that same kind of stuff. And then she opens her email stating how well she's been treated at the company thus far, equal with men on the team. And then ends with how dedicated the leadership team is to resolving these issues. I want to comment on that too, that whole like, she's never been treated this way. She's been in the company since March, and she's in the C-suite, like the executive team there.
Right.
A lot of these things happen because of power dynamics. She's not going to see this happen. She didn't work her way up the ranks of the company. It's just, I mean, it can happen, but it generally is more of a hierarchical, like, someone has power over another person is generally how these things
I get
happen.
why she has this, like, made a statement. It looks good publicly that a woman is coming out and saying, "Hey, I am treated well at this company." Like, that's again, hey, we have a black best friend. Like, that's essentially what this is. Someone speak out on our behalf who happens to be of the same subgroup. But she's also only been here since March. All of they've been looking into this for the last 2 years, apparently, building up this lawsuit, keeping in mind that California has had very strict rules about being in the office until last month. So I guarantee you, of course, she's not going to be drunk in the office, or not going to have males drunk in the office around her and sexually harassing her over Zoom. Of course, that's not going to happen. And of course, she's going to be treated well.
Jeffrey Toobin would have something to say about that.
You're true. Yeah, but this is it's a little ignorant. Right, like this is not going to be happening over remote work necessarily, unless it's more private, scheduled over like Slack or a messaging service, or like we're going to talk about it on our own private Zoom call instead of on a Zoom call with 30 other people. It's a little bit tone deaf.
I agree. And my mom works in HR, so I kind of was picking her brain about this a little bit, like how would, a sexual harassment situation get handled in an HR setting and that kind of stuff. And when I mentioned that Fran Townsend had just joined the company in March, my mom was like, oh, she's been there since March and the investigation's been for 2 years. Like, they probably hired her to get a woman specifically to like front this, and like you're kind of saying, like, my black best friend kind of thing. Like the whole thing is just like, It's weird. And before we get to the last story here, one really odd consistency I thought was how Activision's official statement is, oh, the DFEH didn't tell us what they were perceiving and what they were seeing, and so we couldn't possibly have worked on these things. And then the next paragraph are like, we've been working hard to resolve these issues with our company. And I'm just like, there's so many odd contradictions in what is being said that it's like, you guys fucked up, and you continually fucked up over years and years and years, and you clearly know it.
I don't see... Yeah. The whole thing with all of this is I don't see how years ago, when I don't even remember which developer it was that like busted open with all of the harassment and sexual misconduct, but how did companies
Riot
not
Games.
See that? Was it Riot? Was that the first one?
I think it was Riot. I think so. There was another one too, sort of an S.
Riot,
I can't remember.
Rockstar, Ubisoft, with all of these how can these big corporations, these big development studios, not immediately say, we should probably look into see if that's happening here. If it's happening everywhere else across the industry, we should look into our company, and we should start being proactive about it and finding that out instead of waiting for California to sue them saying, hey, this shit's been happening at your company. And this next statement this next statement from the ex-Blizzard boss is just like, I don't understand. Go ahead and read it, and then we'll talk about it here in a second too.
Yeah. One more thing really quickly, too, before I read that, is that this situation is not happening because someone tweeted something and was like, hey, I'm tweeting out to tell you what's happening here. Like, this is happening because the government, or the Californian government, has been looking into this for years. And the government doesn't sue unless they are, like, damn sure that they have the evidence to do this. So it's like, this is not looking good for Activision, and obviously for the women who were involved in those situations as well. So as you were saying, the ex-Blizzard boss, Mike Morhaime, he had a statement to women. I failed you, says Ethan Gatch at Kotaku. I was going to summarize it, but I actually just want to read the full statement. It's not that long. I think it's kind of good to hear. Mike says, I have read the full complaint against Activision Blizzard and many of the other stories. It is very disturbing and difficult to read. I am ashamed. It feels like everything I thought I stood for has been washed away. What's worse, but even more important, real people have been harmed, and some women had terrible experiences. I was at Blizzard for 28 years. During that time, I tried very hard to create an environment that was safe and welcoming for people of all genders and backgrounds. Excuse me. I know that it was not perfect, but clearly we were far from that goal. The fact that so many women were mistreated and were not supported means we let them down. In addition, we did not succeed in making it feel safe for people to tell their truth. It is no consolation that other companies have faced similar challenges. I wanted us to be different, better. Harassment and discrimination exist. They are prevalent in our industry. It is the responsibility of leadership to keep all employees feeling safe, supported, and treated equitably, regardless of their gender and background. It is the responsibility of leadership to stamp out toxicity and harassment in any form across all levels of the company. The Blizzard women who experienced any of these things, I am extremely sorry that I failed you. I realize that these are just words, but I wanted to acknowledge the women who had awful experiences. I hear you, I believe you, and I am so sorry to have let you down. I want to hear your stories. If you are willing to share them as a leader in our industry, I can and will use my influence to help drive positive change and to combat misogyny, discrimination, and harassment wherever I can. I believe we can do better, and I believe the gaming industry can be placed where women and minorities are welcomed, included, supported, recognized, rewarded, and ultimately unimpeded from the opportunity to make the types of contributions that all of us joined this industry to make. I want the mark I leave on this industry to be something that we can all be proud of. It sounded like you had a specific thought from that statement.
I didn't read that this was an ex-Blizzard boss. I thought this was the current boss, the same one who had made the same statements up above. But I think the point still remains that I was going to make, that you have to create an environment where people feel safe and comfortable, and you have to make that the norm and not the exception to the rule. Be like, hey, this one time I'm gonna make sure that the environment's completely right, so you can come forward if you feel comfortable. It has to be a culture of of rewarding coming forward with this information rather than sweeping it under the rug or something like that. And some of the specific things that came out were, like, for instance, someone who had made a ton more, I think they were on the sales team, a ton more sales pitches, and they had made more money from their marketing campaigns, and they had done something better, but her male counterpart got so this isn't necessarily about sexual harassment, but about, pay inequity.
Unfair treatment, compensation, that kind of stuff.
So her male coworker, who had done a lot worse, got the promotion, and then as soon as that happened, he then took all of his responsibilities and put them off on her, and he just literally got drunk and played video games all day. And that's the kind of thing that, like, people notice that. Even if she doesn't come forward, people have to notice that it's happening. And that's something that it's a huge failure on so many different management levels in that company, but on the CEO, like, it's their responsibility to go in there and say, how do we create this culture? And he kind of mentioned that in his, I didn't realize, again, this was the ex-Blizzard boss, but he's like, hey, I wanted to make sure that this happened for 28 years that I led the company. And obviously you didn't want to do it well enough because you failed miserably in that.
Yeah, the whole, like, we tried so hard. I'm like, but to your point, like, when people are getting shit-faced drunk and then wandering around the office harassing people, like, it's just like, you notice that instantly. Like, you are in one place working with people every day. Like, it's not like you're working with a brand new team every time. You're working with the same people every day, all the time. It's just like, there's no way you don't know about that. I at least appreciate that he acknowledges that, like, he failed. I at least appreciate that, but, like, it's hard for me to imagine that if the culture was that bad, that you don't notice that. I have a very hard time looking at it that way. It's just, it's extremely unfortunate.
How do you not also have, like, actual people on payroll with a company that size, especially people on payroll whose job it is to look out for this kind of shit? Like, the HR exists for a reason. If people don't feel, if you haven't been able to make a culture where people come forward and feel comfortable, first of all, that should be the goal. But second of all, like, you should be able to police it somehow. And through, like, threat of termination or something like that, you should be able to monitor this behavior. And it blows my mind that all of this stuff happens and everyone pretends they don't see it.
Yeah. And especially with some of these people who were called out as repeated offenders. Like, the first time something happens, really something should have happened, of course. Like, you should have done something to reprimand or something like that, move them to a different part, like, whatever you need to do, fire them, like, whatever it looks like. Sometimes these things obviously are very hard to prove, where they're witnesses. Like, there's a lot of, it can be very tough to prove these cases. But when you have the same person being accused over and over and over and over again, and that person's climbing up the ladder, the excuses of, like, well, we just didn't know, we didn't have enough evidence, is not believable. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. And another thing, and this is kind of building off what you were saying too, is in their official statement, they say, like, oh, but we have all these different tools. We have the confidential integrity headline. We have the employee relations, like, team for investigating misconduct. The complaint is that those things weren't working, not that they didn't exist. Right. So it's, again, like, it's just, I feel like everything they've said is kind of tone deaf. Now,
that's what it all boils. It all boils down to them not listening and not believing. And that is the only excuse for it. It has to be people came forward or people observed it, they brought it up, and someone either denied it or they swept it under the rug, or literally in his statement, he said that he dismissed, like, any inappropriate behavior. I don't remember where it is now anymore in this thing, but yeah, he denounces any harassment or misconduct. Right. There's literally a lawsuit from multiple years of misconduct and harassment, and you're saying, nah, none of that happened. And, like, that's exactly the problem that got you where you are today. Yeah. You're not listening. And even if you have an open door, and if you have this ABK program, if you have this secure hotline, it doesn't matter if none of that shit means anything.
Yeah. Yeah. The important thing here is the actions, not the words. Yeah. Especially when it's the repeated offenses. And the only way I can see Activision coming out of this without legal consequences is if they can prove, yes, we had these problems, but when we initiated these programs, you can clearly see a difference, afterwards. That's the only way, but I'm just not getting the vibe that that's what is happening here. Like, not at all.
Yeah.
Like the kind of we were talking about earlier with Brian Townsend being brought on in March to handle the stuff. They knew this was coming. They knew this lawsuit was going to happen. And it seems like they're walking all around it to deny it, to say it's not really as bad as everyone's saying, it's distorted. And I'm like, no, not when the government is suing you like this. This isn't like Epic suing Apple, where Epic's going to use hugely inflammatory language to, essentially act as marketing to work on their behalf. Like, that's not what this is. These claims were, there's evidence for them, and they're going after Activision now.
What do you do with this information as a consumer?
Yeah, I think that's
usually what comes up anytime we hear something about like crunch or really awful harassment or anything like that. Like, the question is like, how do I make my voice heard? There's always like the vote with your wallet kind of thing. You did for Last of Us Part 2 for crunch. You were like, I'm going to delay it for 2 weeks so they don't see that initial stat. But it's so complicated because I also saw on there, like, Steven Dutzman, our podcast dad, he tweeted that people had been asking him, are you going to stop playing World of Warcraft? And he has that World of Warcraft content as in protest. And I think he made a really good point that, like, there are people, this comes up and it's hard to deal with every single time, but there are people who worked really hard on that game who deserve to be paid and compensated for it. But then he also said, there are people who rely on playing that game with me in order to be happy in their lives. And my friends get more out of playing with me than my voice does by not playing it. And that was a really interesting thing that I hadn't considered either. But it's something that I'm constantly thinking about. The next time a Ubisoft game comes out that I want to play, when Diablo 4 comes out, whenever the fuck it's coming out, or Diablo Immortal comes out.
Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Diablo 2 Resurrected coming out soon. Yeah, it's like, it's going to color the way that I think about it, but it's just such a hard decision, and not even a decision. This is like, what are you deciding between? I have no clue.
This is why I was happy with how I handled the Last of Us thing last year, which is, just what you were saying, like, last year the primary thing for me was that if developers don't get their bonuses, that crunch was worthless. Which, like, we're doing this to support them.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt them. That's why I kind of feel like the 2-week boycott is, I think, a good compromise on that. It's like a shot across the bow. We have let this company know that we are not happy with their practice. But it requires a lot of people doing it. And that's kind of the thing. And that's what's tough here is it's not like, I mean, I did it last year because I wanted to personally make me feel good about my purchase and for kind of doing what I thought was right. And as much as, here's the thing is, I would do that in this case, but there's not really any Activision games I'm looking forward to. Like, there's nothing I'm going to buy anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, like, I'm not going to do it, but it's not because I'm going to buy the games anyway. I'm not buying them anyway. I wouldn't have beforehand. But I do have to think that with Ubisoft, like, Mario Rabbids, Spark of Hope, like next year. Yeah, it's like, I'm just going to wait 2 weeks. I just think that's kind of my approach to it. But it's super tough, is kind of what you were pointing out with Steven Dutzman's comments. It's tough. How do you make a stand? In this case, I'm not as familiar with the Ubisoft one because we actually haven't talked about that on the podcast. But in this case, like, if they're getting, like I said earlier, if they're getting sued by the government, it's because the government has enough evidence that they think they can win the case. So it's really, I kind of feel like right now, the best thing we can do is pay attention and see how that lawsuit goes and not forget about this. Because sometimes these stories just get forgotten about, like, next week something else distracts us and then we're not talking about this anymore. Or we're not even not talking about it. Like, I don't think we have to talk about it every single week until the lawsuit happens, unless there's obviously new information. But to be aware that, this stuff happens there, and to look out for that lawsuit coming up. I think the other thing we can do too is just, like, not even as consumers, but just people, is keep an eye out for it. Don't be that person that just says, Bobby wouldn't do that. Right. Don't be that person. Yeah. Just listen to people and support people. It's like, that's kind of what it comes down to.
And as a listener, person who's listening to our show, and another way you can make an impact is, while it might not have anything to do with video games, listen at your workplace. Don't be the person whose company ends up getting sued and you're like, I had no idea what was going on around me when apparently so-and-so is part of the lawsuit. And I had no idea. Like, be the person who's actively looking out. Be an ally. Like, stand up for people when you see mistreatment and make sure that you're doing everything that you can. Be familiar with your business conduct practices and where the hotlines are and all that stuff that can be helpful. Because if you see it and you're in a place of privilege where you feel comfortable talking to someone about it, and the person who's receiving all of that does not feel like they are comfortable enough, that can be the difference between you saving them from a world of hurt, or in this woman's case at Activision Blizzard, that could save their life because she committed suicide because of all of the harassment. And so be an ally. Don't be ignorant. Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think it's a good place to leave it, because I kind of feel like there's beyond that, there's not too much more to say.
Oh, they're
be
just
aware.
Yelling.
Listen.
Just look up whatever direction on the compass Activision Blizzard's headquarters is, and just yell in that direction. Just a general screaming.
I really hope for the best in this case. This is much bigger than I think most instances we've seen of this. Including, like, honestly, like, including, I had to disagree with my mom about this, actually, but I think including the Harvey Weinstein situation. Because, like, obviously there was a culture cultivated in the Harvey Weinstein situation, but it seems like it was ultimately Harvey was, like, the main person behind this.
Oh, sure.
Whereas this sounds like it's a culture throughout the company, which seems like a much bigger problem to solve, first of all, but also just more isolating for the people who were harmed, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So this is a huge deal. This is a huge situation. But yeah, let's move on to something like we do every week. Let's talk about our playtime. That you were playing a new game this week, and a game I'm actually very curious to hear your thoughts about, because I want to play it, but I'm going to wait for it to come to other consoles because I don't want to find a power cable to plug into my Xbox.
Sure, yeah. So Destiny 2, it's not out yet on Steam Deck, but it will be coming to Steam Deck. So when it does, you can play it.
Perfect.
I played, obviously, yes, more Destiny 2. We raided on Friday night. It was awesome. And then I also played Death's Door. I heard all the buzz all over social media, all the outlets talking about how great Death's Door was, reviewing super well everywhere. And then I was like, what the fuck is this game? Why do I know the name of it? And then I looked up a short gameplay clip of it, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's gorgeous. And I do remember seeing that at like a Devolver thing. I think it was maybe a Devolver at E3 this year where they showed it, and I was like, that looks great. So I downloaded it. Day it came out, there was a discount. You can get it for $16 instead of $20. But it's Xbox and PC only right now. I don't know if it's meant to stay that exclusive, but it's from Devolver Digital, who publishes it, so they're not necessarily a company that makes exclusive software, so I assume that it will come to everything else eventually. Mm-hmm. But here's the game, Holden. I'm in love with it. In fact, up until we recorded this, I was playing it. Just beat the second boss of like the first whole full proper world and dungeon, and it's a video game. The art style is very similar to. It looks a lot like Monument Valley almost on iPhone.
Yeah, it does. I've seen gameplay.
Beautiful isometric. It's a lot of really beautiful environments, and but the gameplay it's a beautiful mix of like the Dark Souls franchise in terms of some of the mechanics, Zelda in terms of some of the puzzle solving and the combat and the bosses especially. And then a little bit of Bastion thrown in there, and which are like three amazing video games all mashed into one. And that's a big thing to say, but I really do truly feel that. So I've played about 4 hours of it so far, which as I understand is like just less than halfway through it. And I am. So some of the mechanics. So you're going into these different doors. You're a little crow that's walking around hitting people with swords and stuff like that. You get a bow and arrow, and then eventually magic, and so you're walking around through these doors. You're a living reaper, is what they call it, and you're going to like harvest souls and stuff to eventually, I guess, get out of this like death dimension where everyone's sitting there. All the reapers and stuff like that. There's a bird sitting there out of a little typewriter, like an accountant in in freaking The Producers or something like that. And then there's one Overlord guy. It's from Devolver, so all of the dialogue is also really snappy and witty and great. But you are going into these little doors that are like in this floating weird death realm, and then you go through the door and you're in these beautiful environments. And that also, those serve as your, like, if you think about Demon Souls, the Nexus, the hub is that little death realm, and then the doors are all the little gravestones leading you to all the other places. And as you go through, you are going around this isometric world. You're defeating enemies. The enemies all have some kind of like trick to them, whether it's one that has like this really, really big skull-shaped rock on its back, so you can only hit it from his front, but he tumbles at you. Or there are some that like do these spinning attacks. There are these mages that shoot fireballs that you can reflect them with your sword, like you're fighting Ganondorf. And so it's really fun to go around the world and fight these, and especially when they throw different types of them at you, and you got to figure out how am I going to tackle this little room. But you're the whole time that you're going, you're unlocking little shortcuts back to the door, so that if you die, the world resets. You open up that door, you walk right back into that room, and then or that land, and you got to keep going. So you unlock these shortcuts. So it's like a Bloodborne, Dark Souls almost type thing.
Yeah.
Where if you progress far enough and you get there, it doesn't matter if you die because your progress isn't completely reset. What I like about it is that it's a lot more accessible than Dark Souls, though, because you don't lose anything by dying other than progress. Like you don't have these giant pools of blood echoes or souls or whatever they are. You're not losing all of those. You do have like upgrade materials that you pick up, these little orbs that you get from killing people or from finding them in the world, that you can then make your attack stronger or fight faster or make your magic stronger, stuff like that. But you don't lose any of those if you die. It's just resetting your progress through the world. So all of that is really cool. There are all sorts of little hidden secrets, and like you can go in here and find extra little chunk of orbs, or come in here and find, like, I found a wedding ring so far. It's like, you found a wedding ring. Now you just got to find someone who wants to marry you. I'm like, cool. I'll fucking come across that sometime. There are little puzzles everywhere. Like there's like a chessboard with a bunch of vases on it, and as you hit 5 vases, they all just kind of respawn. And there's got to be some solution to that puzzle. It's in the world. I have no idea what that solution is, but I just had to keep going, and eventually I figure I'll come back and solve it after I gain some number of knowledge. But then they also have that, that the Metroidvania type thing where as you progress through the story, you get abilities like magic or things that will unlock other parts of the world. So you can go back through these levels and find other little hidden secrets and puzzles and treasures and things like that. So it's really great, really fun to explore. But then the boss battles are the most Zelda-ass thing I've ever seen. They are almost all of them so far have taken place in like a 2D top-down Zelda type room, where it's a big square room, or it's a big platform that you're on or something like that, and it's all just about reflecting shots with your sword or hurling things at them, or they'll throw something at you, you got to pick it up and throw it back at them, or dodging their attack. And it's all mechanics that I've seen in a trillion different Zelda bosses over the X amount of Zelda games I've ever played. So I think this is when it comes to another platform, because again, it's Xbox exclusive unless you have a PC right now. Unless you get a Steam Deck. There you go. You can get a Steam Deck. But when it comes to other platforms, I think this is a day one purchase for you, because I think you're going to freaking love it.
Yeah, I really, 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 really want to play it. And it's so stupid. I'm just like, I don't have a power cable for my Xbox, or I can't find it at least. So I'm not going to... Well, actually, I do know where it is. I just don't want to do it.
I totally get that, though. I totally get that.
It's honestly mostly just that I'm so used to the snappiness of a next-gen console that I don't want to use an Xbox One S at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to deal with that slowness. It's just so snobby of me. I'm just pulling out my iPad actually for a second, because I just came up with an idea and I need to write it down.
Oh, for a game?
Yeah. Well, not a game, but like a boss battle encounter, actually. It just hit me. I'm like, that's fucking cool.
Awesome. So yeah, I've been playing that. I'm really enjoying it. It has been taking me away from, however, Zelda. I played a little bit more of Skyward Sword. I got to... I cleansed the first little area. I maybe made an extra hour of progress at most, but I started in the little forest area, dived down into the clouds. Apparently my bird's a little wuss and won't dive under the clouds with me, and just like throws me off its back onto the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like cleansed that first stone thing, went and saw this lady, and she's like, here's a door that's open for you now. I'm like, awesome, cool. And then that's as far as I've gotten. So I assume I'm like in or like at the first dungeon, maybe that first temple. So
Who was the lady who said that?
I don't know. She was like in the middle of there was like in the middle of this, there was a big door that I opened up, and then I went inside, and then she's like sitting on this pedestal up on this.
Did she have she was in like a red hood?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, you're nowhere near a dungeon yet.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Great. So that's as far as I've progressed there because I've been playing Death's Door whenever I have time to play games.
Yeah. I totally get playing Death's Door first, to be honest. It sounds like that's the better.
Yeah. Although we've got a week left of this month, and we got to play Katana Zero. And that's only like 8 or 10 hours, so I can just quit work and do that.
I was talking to Cozy Bear, and he, I forgot a game. I was talking to Cozy Bear, and he,
Alex Cozina from twitch.tv/CozyBear, who makes a lot of really cool, awesome cooking stuff.
That's the same fella. You're playing Mario Kart for game night. Gotcha. Which I'm not going to talk about Mario Kart, because when you go Mario Kart, there's tracks you can race. You know what Mario Kart is.
But you can say that if people want to play Mario Kart with us or other games, patreon.com/RespawnAimFire, where you can, for $1, join us on game nights.
So I guess what are you got enough time to use the motion controls for like sword mechanics in Zelda versus like the button controls? Have you gotten to see
the one thing that's frustrating me so far, that it's like a very sweet spot. Again, I'm using separated Joy-Cons to play. Is the Skyward strike, like raising above your head and striking.
Yep.
Because I play sometimes like laying down on the floor in front of my TV, and so I'll just like raise it up, and then I'll like raise it all the way up. I'm like, frickin', I'll stand up, and that's not working, and I'm just doing this, like, frickin' raise your sword, dude, and he's just like, it's obnoxious. And then I figured out that if I raise up my head and tilt it back just a little bit, that seems to click it in this place rather than pointing up. It just tilt it backwards. That seems to raise it up above his head.
I wish I knew that, because there's a boss where you have to use Skyward Strike in like the heat of the moment, like shit's going on around you, prepare your Skyward Strike and then go. And I was getting frustrated, exactly what you were saying. It's like, no, up.
Yes.
I know what to do, just do it.
Yep.
So here's the thing about Zelda Skyward Sword. I am mixed on it. But I'm mixed not if I like it or not. I'm mixed on, is it a great Zelda game or not? And in many ways, I'm like, this is a great Zelda game. And in other ways, I'm like, this is frustrating. And that is part of it. The motion controls didn't bother me as much until the combat started to get harder.
No, yeah.
So, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I'm doing the 6-heart challenge. I'm not
you are?
collecting any heart pieces.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not collecting any heart pieces. I'm not collecting any... Although, I have accidentally gotten 2 heart pieces. Scary. Because if I get 2 more, I have to, like, go back to an earlier save, and hopefully I'm allowed to do that. Or I'm capable of doing that. Like an auto-save right as I got it or something.
You said allowed, and I'm like, oh god, I have to go ask my mom. Mom, can I go back to another save? Does that still count as a 6-heart challenge? And she's like, no.
No, I was going to call E.G. Onuma. E.G., can I please revert back to the old save? So yeah, like the motion controls didn't bother, because they're not bad. I don't think they're bad. But when you have limited hearts and you're coming across one of the bokoblins that has the electric sword, where if you hit it, you lose a whole heart.
Ooh.
It's very frustrating when you go to make the side strike and then he all of a sudden moves over and you can't respond fast enough in time. Whereas when you have the button controls, it's easier to handle those situations.
Sure.
But I want to play with the motion controls because that's kind of how it's designed to be played. It makes camera controls easier, that kind of stuff. So it can get a little frustrating at parts because of that. But I also I don't really know if it would have perfect motion controls. I don't really know if, because there's so much going on in terms of how someone would swipe differently than somebody else. They have to accommodate for so many different movesets that I can imagine that the recalibration is there as a mandatory. You have to have that. I don't know, it can get a little messy. But the thing that makes me just love this game so much is just every dungeon is fucking awesome. Every
Can't
single
wait.
one has been so good so far, and the boss battles are so fun. And Cozy made a good point too when I was talking to him about it, which is that this Zelda game I think is better than any of the other Zelda games at progressing the puzzles in the game in terms of always using your items going forward. There's not really like a Dominion rod or a spinner where I'll use it in one dungeon and it's cool and then never really use it after that. Everything seems to have come back in some way, shape, or form. But the dungeons are just like so good. I think I have one left now. I'm gonna try to beat the game tonight. I'm at the Fire Sanctuary, but I don't know what to expect, so no one spoil anything for me in the chat. But the other thing that's like frustrating with the game is, at first I'm like, I love the overworld. It's so cool that all these different areas are like basically dungeons, and you do this like different dungeon before going to the main dungeon. I'm like, that's kind of cool. But then it kind of gets exhausting because everything is the same. Everything's kind of one note in that way. And I don't mean one note in the worst way. It's not like I'm hating it. But it's just like, okay, the overworld is just another dungeon again. But not a lot of overworld. There's boring sky and then 3 areas to go to. And the 3 areas you go back to twice each. And then literally go over the same linear path that you went over the last time. And it's really tedious. Like, for example, one of my least favorite things about Twilight Princess was the Twilight Realm portions where you turn into Wolflink and collect the bugs to fill up the Vessel of Light to restore light to that area, get rid of the Twilight. I'm like, I get it's there. It's not like it's awful, but it's probably one of the weakest parts of Twilight Princess. And then they do that again in this game, but in the last half, when you return to areas you've already been to. So you're navigating an area you've already been to do a mechanic that wasn't really all that fun in Twilight Princess to begin with. And it's such a slog. It's just like, what were you thinking? Like, there's enough content in this game that I think they could have gotten rid of that and found some other way to give you the item you need to get to the next dungeon. I don't know, like, it just, the last half the dungeons are better so far, but then like the getting to each dungeon has gotten worse. And in the second half, after you beat a dungeon, you have to go back to this one area to learn a song, to fly back to another area you've already gone to before so you can use that song. And it's just like, there's just so many points where I'm like, you didn't have to fluff it this much. You didn't have to add this much fluff. It would have been fine without this stuff, I think. But I still want to keep playing because I really, really enjoy the puzzles. I really enjoy the art style, honestly. It's just really great, and all the dungeons feel different than something I have seen before in a Zelda game. The last dungeon I did was the Sand Ship, which I don't know if I can tell you how to solve puzzles, but it involves a time mechanic of like jumping back and forth from the past to the present in a way that you have to understand the layout of the dungeon to get the best use out of it. I'm like, this is just cool. I just like these dungeons a lot. So like, I'm mixed on it, but mixed on, is this a great Zelda game?
Yeah.
Or a good Zelda game?
I just looked up how long it takes to beat, and it says 38 and a half hours. What is the average Zelda game?
I think that like, I know Breath of the Wild is like 50. But that seems like the outlier because it's such a big game. Yeah, look that up. I'm curious. What does it say for like Ocarina of Time? Because it has a lot of dungeons in it. Twilight Princess also has a lot of dungeons
25 for that.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Let's see about Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask, I'm sure, is much shorter too.
Yeah, Wind Waker's probably shorter. Although I don't know.
25 for Majora's Mask. Sometimes. 29 for Wind Waker. Yeah, it's a long. 40 hours is a long Zelda game.
I'm about 22 hours in, and I feel like I'm very close to the end. Like, I'm just now
You might just be halfway.
I hope not.
So, Skyward Sword, okay. I
also have, I have all the items. I just feel like I'm at the last area. Unless they throw a surprise at me.
Hold on. This might be due to some of the quality of life improvements. Zelda Skyward Sword on Wii, main story 38 and a half hours. main plus extra 46 hours, completion is 58. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD on Switch, main story is 28. Main plus extra is 34.5, completion is 35. Okay, so they've cut a lot. They've cut that game down almost in half from
I'll
for
tell
the
you what it
completionists
is.
at least.
Because I played a little bit of Skyward Sword on the Wii when that came out. I just never finished it. And B talks to you all the goddamn time in that game. And that's the biggest thing I think that they cleaned up. So I really think that they may have had 10 hours of fee dialogue in the original version of that game. Like, holy shit, that's bananas. That is bananas. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Skyward Sword. Probably by next week I'll have it finished. We'll talk about it. But I do want to finish it tonight. But we'll kind of see if it turns out there's 7 billion more dungeons after I finish this one. Speaking of motion controls and terrible motion controls, here's a story about my friend Steven who let me know that he got a, point the gun at the screen and shoot the chickens game for Switch. And it's called Chicken Range. It was like $10 for the game and the gun. And he was telling me how
is it a gun attachment for the Switch Joy-Con, or is it an actual peripheral? Okay.
You put the Joy-Cons in there, and actually, this is something I kind of liked about it is the trigger is the right trigger of a Joy-Con.
Okay.
It was actually kind of cool how they did that. But let me tell you, it was bad. It was really bad. Holy crap. The mechanic is basically these chickens running across the screen, and they're throwing eggs at the screen, which blocks your view. Once the whole view is filled up with eggs, you lose. But you have to aim and point at the screen to shoot them. But because this is a gyroscope game and not a Wii style point at the sensor bar style game, it doesn't work by aiming at a chicken and firing. It's let me move this a little bit to the right so that I can hit that chicken over there, and you kind of have to infer a little bit. But what makes it really, really terrible is at least to what I noticed, there didn't seem to be a way to reset the gyro. So at a certain point while playing this, my game was literally parallel to the TV trying to figure out how to aim properly. It was a puzzle in and of itself. Holy crap. Garbage. But
are they throwing eggs and then the whole eggs block the screen, or is it egg yolk and stuff like that covering up the screen?
Egg yolk and stuff like that.
That is abhorrent. Can you imagine if you played a game where a bunch of humans were coming at you throwing their babies at the screen and all their babies' blood? That is awful.
We'll do a positive spin on it. It is farmed eggs, which don't actually have a fetus inside of it, and they're protesting their treatment from their farmer.
Is that part of the story, or is that what you made up to make me feel better?
I made it up to make you feel better, but it's true, 100% true. You should feel better now. It was fun to play for 5 minutes because it was bad. It was wow, this exists. But yeah, don't play this game. Don't do it. It's
all right, Chicken
not
Range,
worth it.
Taking it
Chicken
off my.
Range. Don't.
Who had that on Fantasy Critic?
Yeah. I also played. I played a lot of Animal Crossing this week. I think I'm back. I think I'm back at Animal Crossing again because I have some more projects I'm working on. My initial Island 4.0 projects just wrapped them, and I just started to kind of just roll with it and see what happened. And it's looking pretty good, actually. I have revamped my campsite. I removed the hidden secret area on my map, but I'll be doing something in that kind of vein, but I won't talk about it yet because I haven't done it yet. And I am working, I'm in a cherry orchard, which is lined with cliffs, which are covered in tulips that are red, yellow, and white, and that never repeats the same color up or down, left or right. It's the diagonally it will, but it's always different. There's 150 tulips. It took a while.
God.
Yeah,
did you have
but
to get out graph paper and write it all down?
No, so what I did is I was okay, red, yellow, red, yellow, white, red, yellow, white. But then if it would kind of laid out with the next row was irregular, I couldn't see the flower color yet because it was just a little weed in the ground, basically. So I'd like dig it up and be like, okay, that's a yellow one. I can't put a yellow one here, so I'll change the pattern temporarily to this, and then afterwards, the next day when the flowers had grown a little bit and I could start seeing a little like speck of color coming out of them, I just kind of walked through to make sure there weren't any like doubled colors together. And if there were, I would dig it up, hold it, find another area with double colors, see if I could put the other color I had in my pocket there instead, and just kind of like move things around. And it worked. It looks great. I don't really have to do it again for the next part of the island, so we'll have fun doing that. But it's manageable. It actually sounds a lot harder than it really was. But I think it's shaping up really well. I like that. I like my cherry orchard. I'm gonna move my rock garden, I think, which will be kind of a pain in the ass because you can't like move it. You have to break the rocks, and then each day one rock will repopulate somewhere on the island. So I kind of need to like set up enough of my island, know where I'm going to put that rock garden, and see if I can block off enough areas in the map where I think it could respawn so that it doesn't respawn there, and kind of force it to respawn in this one area. I've done it before, it just takes a long fucking time.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it.
Are you time traveling to make all that happen? Okay. A
little bit. But it's working out. It looks good. I'm happy with it. I got a lot more to do though. I have like a bigger vision now, and I don't know. It's looking good. I'm happy with it so far. Really hoping that next update comes out. I really hope it does. They used to update once a month.
No.
Well, they used to update once a month, and now the last update they did was the end of April. So it's been like 3 months since they've updated the game. I feel like if there's a 3-month gap, something big is coming, because that's way past their usual cadence of releases for the updates. And Doug Bowser was saying like they're still releasing updates, so it's going to happen. I think there's going to be a bigger update soon. So that's Animal Crossing. Back into it. I just love that game. Oh, and this is important to me. Stupid, nerdy thing, but it's important to me. When you're on the Switch, you can sort your games in like the full list of all your games by the total time played, which is generally how I do it. But even though I put in like 100 more hours into Animal Crossing over Breath of the Wild was always the first game listed, and I never understood why. But I inferred it was because
game.
No, I inferred it was because the different user accounts it incorporates all the different user accounts. Whereas when I look at my profile to see how many hours I've spent in the game, I can only see just the one profile. So I'm like, I probably spent 100 hours in another profile where I did like the 3-heart challenge for Breath of the Wild, and I did another run. I can't remember. I did another style run. I probably did it in that, and that's why it was like too much. But now Animal Crossing is number 1, the way I want it. I have put more time in that game than anything else. Actually, literally any game ever.
Damn.
So that's Animal Crossing. And speaking of Animal Crossing, moving on to the Sony Quest log. Ow. And we're in a weird position. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's better now. So Michael Pachter thinks Sony's E3 strategy is, quote, really dumb. The Zermenicon at PlayStation Lifestyle. This comes from the Sifted show, Pachter Factor. It's SIFTD, which it is actually pronounced Sifted.
Okay.
Doesn't look like it, but that is how it's pronounced. I watch Pachter Factor actually. Even though I don't agree with Michael Pachter, I appreciate his input because he's a financial analyst who has connections to executives, hosts networking parties at E3. He's connected. He knows shit. So I think it's worth listening to him. And this is what he said. Here's the full quote. I think Sony is taking a wrong direction. I think they're making a huge strategic error abandoning E3. I think that is just the wrong thing to do. And I'm hopeful that they figure it out and they come back next year. Somebody convinced them that they'll save $20 million by skipping E3. And this year's E3, maybe that was a prudent decision. They skipped the one prior as well. And I think that's just a bad move. Really dumb strategy because you can't buy that much press for $20 million. Having an event and getting all your fans to focus on that single event is really, really powerful. And I think that whoever's advising their management that skipping E3 is a cost-conscious move and smart is just wrong. They're just dumb. Very tactfully put from Michael Pachter.
Yeah, I think we agree.
Do you agree?
When we talked about E3 afterwards this year, I think we all pretty much agreed. We're like, man, I miss Sony. I miss that little. There's a Sony-sized hole in my heart. But I couldn't remember. Obviously, they skipped this year, and they had their own thing like a few weeks later with the Sony State of Play. They skipped last year because E3 skipped last year. And then did they also skip the year before? Did they skip 2019?
They skipped 2019, yeah.
Damn, it's been over 3 years since we saw Sony at an E3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hadn't considered that the money that they save by skipping E3 also means that they miss out on a ton of advertising, and like that's probably a lot of advertising. Like you couldn't buy that with money. And then I started to think about everyone who's not us, who's not like plugged into the video game industry, and there's a State of Play coming, I'm gonna literally put it on a calendar so that I can make sure to watch it. There are other people who are like, they'll catch up on IGN when they see a headline saying State of Play today revealed blah blah blah. I'm like, cool, let me catch up with that. And then there are the people who don't pay attention to any of that, and they just read about it in, I don't know, the fucking New York Times or wherever those kind of people like my brother-in-law who like he'll play all the big Sony hits and stuff like that, and then he'll like bring up a story like, oh my god, did you hear about this game coming out? And I'll be like, I've known about that game for 1 trillion weeks, and I know 30,000 different awful things that are going on behind the scenes for it. And he's just like, I read about this today on BuzzFeed. And I was like, okay. But anyway, I think about all those people, and those people, like, they see the big publications who publish all sorts of stories about E3 probably don't publish everything about little tiny Sony E3 or Sony State of Plays. So that's
certainly the most recent State of Play.
Yeah. So having all that focus, and like people like my brother-in-law are looking specifically during E3 because they know E3 is coming around. Like that's when they're paying attention. Sony's missing out on a ton of people, and I hadn't really thought about that. Because I've always been a fan of like sense. I get it. Nintendo Direct, they're the way to go. Sony State of Play, I get it. Let's just do it all digital, trailer anyway. And why not do it on their own terms? They don't have to worry about paying E3 and being part of it. And so I've always been kind of a proponent of that. But now I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to consider that you should come back to E3. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe they should too. To give Sony some, like, to play devil's advocate for Sony, it's also probably just that they want to have control over their messaging, not just for having their own event, but also for timing. Like, they don't want to feel pressured to make sure they have things for E3. Sure. They want to talk about things when they feel like it's actually time to. Otherwise, that's when you get, like, this game's coming out holiday 2021, and then it's actually coming out, like, summer 2022, and that was the plan the whole time, really, but they needed that E3 moment. So they can probably avoid some of that stuff. But yeah, like the saving the money, like just like you said, like more people being aware, more eyes on it. But also, like right now, I don't know what Sony's doing. I think their marketing has been like really, really lackluster. I mean, I was critical of their marketing last year too. It got better obviously as the year went on. But I'm actually feeling really down on Sony right now because I don't really know what their exclusive games are going to be outside of Horizon, God of War, and Gran Turismo, which I don't care about anyway. Like, actually, I really only care about God of War out of those three. And I don't know anything about that. But apparently it's coming next year, but we haven't seen anything about that. And this is kind of a spoiler for a future moment, but like, Dead Space, that being a next-gen exclusive, means that EA has more next-gen exclusive games announced than Sony does. That's weird. That's really strange. So it's like, I don't know what their future is. I know Microsoft now has a ton of great stuff coming exclusively to their services and their box over the next few years. I know about that stuff now. And Sony has kind of let that attention go to Microsoft and Nintendo for literally about 2 months now. I kind of feel like there's not really an excuse for that. Like, you need to respond. And it feels like that Sony's getting cocky again. Like, apparently they sold 10 million units of PS5, and Series X and S combined only sold like 5 million or 5.9 million so far or something like that. So, like, Sony's like clearly like coming out ahead right now. And I just hope this isn't them getting arrogant, because I don't think they can afford to be arrogant anymore because Microsoft is absolutely going to be a formidable opponent or competitor in just like the next probably few years. And I just hope that Sony is ready for that. Maybe that's why they're silent right now, so they can be, prepping for that. I don't know, but I just would like to hear more from them in general, and I think being at E3 is a major component of that.
I think the reason why they skipped, obviously, the first E3 is that, like, hey, I think they even came out and said this, like, we don't have anything really to show you right now, and we'd rather wait until we do. But I think they might be in a little bit of that rut right now where there's like, we don't have anything. We don't feel like putting in the months of work to make a vertical slice right now when we could just focus that energy on the game itself, because even, like, they can't even commit to a date, or even, like, we're pretty sure Horizon's on track for end of this year. Shrug. I don't know. So, like, I feel like they're at the spot where if they had come to E3 this year, they would have been sacrificing a lot in order to make up announcements for things that they didn't necessarily want to reveal yet. So I think like you said, controlling the messaging a little bit and not having to make big moments. And obviously, it has some backlash and it has some consequences for it. And Xbox and Nintendo are soaking up that advertising sunlight right now. But I feel like when they do finally have a lot to show off, like God of War and whatever, all of these studios they're acquiring, all that kind of fun stuff, whenever they finally do have things to say, I feel like they're going to come back to E3. Yeah. If E3 is still around in a way that's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're definitely right about them probably not having enough things to make that kind of event worthwhile. I think you're totally right on that. That is also, I think, part of my concern too. If they were doing fully PS5 only experiences at this point, I think it'd be more understandable. But we are at the beginning of the cycle of this console. Generally, you want to have things lined up, and they're doing cross-gen, which means they've probably had a lot of these games in development for a while now. Why aren't they prepared for this period? This is probably one of the most important periods of a console. And there's a reason Switch is doing so well right now, and I think a big reason for that is they had Zelda and Mario Odyssey at the beginning and had this just like rock solid first year. I still think that Nintendo Switch's first year was their best year, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Zelda, Mario Kart, even though it was a port, Splatoon, they had tons of stuff. It was an unbelievably good
Arms.
year. Arms was great. Arms was good. Even Snipper Clips was fun. So yeah, I kind of feel like, for me, no matter how I look at this, it's a little concerning for Sony. Not like critical,
They're doomed.
Yeah, they're not doomed, but it's a little like, what's going on over there? I'm a little concerned. I still have my PS5. I still love my PS5. Not as we talked about earlier with my power cable for Xbox. Clearly, I'm not jumping ships anytime soon.
You literally keep it in a different place than your Xbox, just so you have an excuse not to play your Xbox. That's like when mom grounds you, and instead of having to like hide the whole system, she's like, "I'm just gonna take the power cable. That way, you just can't play this system."
Which is so cruel because it's just teasing you right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how many different shaped power cables are around the house? Can I pull one out of mom's laptop? Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, when I was a kid, it'd be like, Apple TV uses the same cord. I know mom doesn't know about that, so I'll shut the fuck up. Like, at night. Yeah. Totally something I would have done as a kid. Yeah, so that's Sony and E3. I think Michael Pachter is largely correct here. I think he could have been more tactful, but that's just kind of how Michael Pachter is. What am I talking about? I'm not very tactful. What the fuck am I talking about? Moving on to the third-party quest log, Netflix's gaming pivot is mobile-focused and free for subscribers, as Austin Golson at Polygon. This is something we kind of talked about last week, which is, first of all, Netflix is doing this, but also, like, what is the plan? Is this going to be mobile games? Is it going to be, like, PlayStation games? And we now know this is mobile games, and it'll just be a category, just like movies and TV shows are categories on Netflix, and it will not change the subscription cost of it. Now that we know this, Chad, does this change how you feel about the service at all?
I am now 100% not interested in it. Yeah. They had mentioned, we did Minecraft Story Mode, and then also we experimented with Stranger Things, that mobile game, and it's like, okay, that's the route they're going. I'm no longer interested in it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I do like that it's included with your subscription. No in-game ads, no purchases. That's great, but you are not targeting me, and I'm okay.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. Like, I personally couldn't care less about this. Like, I just don't. It just doesn't impress me at all. As a console gamer, but I'm also going to be totally contradictory in the next story, by the way. But I do think this is actually a smart business move for Netflix because, first of all, the mobile market is huge. It is as big as the console market. It's not like they're ignoring gamers. They're going after a huge group of gamers for sure. It will keep people in. Like, I was kind of reading their, I'm going to read the whole thing, but I kind of scanned through their investor letter where they said all this stuff. And part of what they're saying was that they just need another way to maintain subscribers. And I think this is a way to do that and kind of to continue to grow. We're like, oh, I don't really have a Stranger Things show to watch right now, but I'll keep playing that Stranger Things game until it comes out. I think it makes sense for that reason. I also think just in the whole of game streaming, this is a smart approach because what's easier to stream, Destiny or a Stranger Things mobile game?
Yeah.
You can work on that technology and refine that with something that's a little bit easier to work with, and then you can start scaling up. Like, maybe this is what the PlayStation thing is about. Maybe it's about getting some of their mobile games because PlayStation was talking about that and getting some of those on Netflix, and then that opens a door to get Ghost of Tsushima like later on or something like that on there. So I think this is a smart business move, but I do think it doesn't speak to gamers like us.
Yep.
But allow me to be a hypocrite for a second because Tetris Beat brings the classic puzzle game to Apple Arcade, says CJ Anderson. Is it Anderson? Sure, it's Anderson. Sorry, CJ. At Destructoid. Also coming is Jetpack Joyride Plus and Monster Hunter Stories, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a big get for Apple Arcade.
It is, yeah. It's the mobile version of it, so I don't think it has controller support, but it's an RPG. It's like a turn-based RPG, so I think that's probably fine.
And the sequel's coming to Switch this year, I think, too.
I think it already came out, or it's about to come out. I can't remember. Maybe it's already. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to Monster Hunter that much.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to talk about Apple Arcade for a little bit here. Because first of all, I've checked Apple Arcade every day since this announcement to see when Tetris Beat is coming, because I can't wait. It is basically Luminous, but leaning way more towards Tetris, as opposed to like a Dr. Mario style game or a Puyo Puyo game. I'm like, oh, that just sounds fucking great. I'm so on board with that, and it's included in my subscription with Apple One, so like I'm just gonna get it and play it, and that's awesome. Like, I'm super pumped for that. And I'm kind of looking through their catalog now, and I'm like, there's actually a lot of really good stuff here. I think they've really built up a good library of content, including classic games that are from the past that maybe you didn't buy, but now you can just play it. And I'm like, I think it's actually really worth it. I really do.
Yeah,
and I think. Go ahead, sorry.
There's a ton of stuff we talked about in maybe it was early April. They had that huge content drop of like they had the Final Fantasy something like that game. They had they started remastering or putting out exclusive versions of all the most, like, for instance, Jetpack Joyride, all the most successful iOS games over the last decade. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, nothing ever leaves the service. They just keep accumulating more and more games for you to play for that one price. So it was worth it for you to play Grindstone, at least for a month. And then now that all of this other shit's on there, like that, yeah, that's an incredible value. If only I just played mobile games.
And on top of that, like in the case like Tetris Beat, they're going to be adding new content every single month. So if you like that game, it kind of gives you a reason to keep that subscription going. Because Tetris is the perfect kind of game where it's like, it doesn't really get old. It's timeless. It's classic.
It gets old for me after literally like 7 seconds. I get one little gap in a line somewhere, and I'm like, oh, nope, this game sucks. I hate it.
And it's the mobile focus and the subscriptions to mobile games like this, and then Netflix getting involved in it. Like, we're going to see a lot of competition in this. And I think hopefully we'll start seeing like really good mobile games because they don't have to rely on in-game ads or in-game purchases. Oh, by the way, Netflix won't be doing any of that stuff either, just like Apple Arcade doesn't.
Yeah.
So like, I think this could actually really open up mobile games to maybe be something more interesting to someone like us. Like, but kind of how Pokemon Go, like you will make an excuse to play Pokemon Go because
Sure,
you've
yeah.
enjoyed it. It's like your mobile game excuse or a mobile game outlier, if you will. Like, of all the other mobile games, you don't give a shit, but Pokemon Go you do. And I feel like we could maybe start seeing some of that stuff because I do like a mobile game if it is like tailored for mobile and isn't just like I don't know, like a Words with Friends kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't really get into that kind of stuff. But I can see, like, if you started seeing more, like, Monument Valley kind of style experiments where it's really beautiful and I can just go to Apple Arcade and just play it, I think that sounds great. Speaking of great, Chad, you got some EA announcements to talk about here.
Yes.
There's not really a lot to talk about here, but there's one story that is just, that it's the greatest thing ever. Dead Space remake announced at EA Play Live.
True.
It says Michael McWhorter at Polygon. Fuck yeah, it's coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series S/X. Basically, all we really know. We know there's
gen exclusive.
Yes.
No, we know some more. We know some more. We know that they are
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that they are making it next gen exclusive so that because they were limited in the level design from some of the technical limitations from the PS3 360 era. So when they are remaking this ground up, but they're remaking the original level designs that they couldn't do for the first game. So even if you've played and beat this game or even platinumed it like I did, there's going to be new shit in there for you. And it's going to be so freaking exciting.
I want to see gameplay of this so bad. So bad. Oh. They showed off a little tease.
Yeah,
give you an idea of like the atmosphere and all that.
But also that we know now that they're from start screen or what do they call it specifically? It was like not title screen, but start screen to credits.
Yeah, they said from
no
the God
loading,
of War thing, all
one shot. So they're going the God of War route, where it's all one shot as well. No UI. The game already like was really great at integrating all of that UI into the character, like Isaac's back, having the segments for your health and the menus being holographic things that pop up out of your suit. Like, it's going to be so immersive, and I can't fucking wait.
I was going back and watching some Dead Space 1 footage, and I'll tell you, that game looks like it actually holds up really well.
Oh, really?
Surprisingly, considering it's a 360 game. And then I was listening to Mr. Maddie's play, who does the Defining Duke on kind of Colin's Last Stand Xbox podcast. And he was saying, like, both the first two games actually still hold up to, like, modern standards. So I'm so ecstatic now to see that come back, updated with the better visuals and the better lighting, and like kind of saying, like, from start screen, all one continuous shot. Like, this just sounds perfect.
Yeah.
And I could use some more survival horror games in my life. I feel like it's Resident Evil and Blue Box's Abandoned to look forward to. And that's like all we have for like survival horror right now. Yeah. Oh wait. I didn't wait. Tangent for a second. I didn't include this in the notes. I was debating it if I would or not, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. There's two more updates with Blue Box situation that are just
no.
Come on, guys. The Hassan Karaman, who's like the head of the Blue Box Game Studios, he changed his cover photo on Twitter to a mountain, and the mountain apparently is called Kojima. So it's like, what the fuck?
Come on, man.
And then another one was, someone tweeted at Shuhei Yoshida, who heads the indie side of PlayStation, and was like, hey, I heard there's a rumored, like, event coming up for PlayStation. Are we gonna see this Blue Box Studios game there? And all Shuhei Yoshida responded was with emoji of, shh.
Oh, no.
So, like, it's not as, like, weird as the Kojima one, the mountain, but, like, still, like, they're playing with us, man. They're totally playing with us. I find the whole thing so fucking fun.
I'm sorry. I promise you I am listening. I'm just also really invested in figuring out where and how I can play Dead Space Extraction right now, which was the on-rails Wii game that then eventually came to PlayStation Move on the PS3. But all I can find is Dead Space Ignition, which is the comic book thing on 360.
And that's not as good?
It's not the game. It's not like it's an interactive comic. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's on Game Pass. But I can't find Dead Space Extraction anywhere.
Well, if it's on Game Pass, it might also be available alongside Battlefield 2042 whenever that comes to the EA Play that's just available in Game Pass. Boom, segued into that one.
You're right.
I don't personally have an interest in Battlefield, but I thought this was interesting. It seems to be exciting a lot of people. New Battlefield's 2042 gameplay trailer shows how you can build your own battlefield with Portal, says Liana Rupert at Game Informer. So this new mode allows players to create their own rules for a multiplayer match by mixing and matching different Battlefield styles. So like Battlefield Bad Company, Battlefield World War II, or the new Battlefield 2042. And this actually sounds really interesting. So like one of the examples they provided was you could say it's a 32v4 match. And you're like, why would you do that? Well, it's because there's 32 World War II soldiers and then 4 future 2042 soldiers who have all this extra technology and that kind of shit. So they have an advantage in the technology and the hardware they have, whereas the World War II soldiers, there's just more of them. So they kind of get that benefit. That's just one example. It seems like you can do quite a bit with this. I'm like, that sounds kind of cool, actually. I don't know how they're going to balance that, but I'm interested. Sure.
It sounds awesome. The trailer for it was like 3.5 minutes of literally just showing you nonstop cool shit happening. And there was even one where you could set it up where it's just medics versus soldiers, and it was just so the medics have the defibrillators, and they're running around. And you just go clear and shock someone to death, or the other team has knives, and it's just defibrillators versus knives, and that's the whole battle. And that seems like it's fun as hell. But I'm really looking forward. Like, honestly, this is the most excited I've ever been for a Battlefield game. In fact, this is the only time I've felt excitement for a Battlefield game. And after watching the trailer, I'm really into it. And I don't know how they're going to make... Battlefield Portal looks cool. It has cool elements. I don't know how they're going to integrate it into matchmaking and all that kind of stuff. Because, like, if anyone can make a game and mix and match a bunch of different elements... then how does everyone play that? Like, if I make a game, though, and then people have to look for games by rule set and be like, oh, that rule set seems really interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll play that one.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
But it's not like a tailored playlist. Like, I don't know how they're going to do that, but maybe they'll, hey, randomly, your game that you created is going to jump into the playlist and people will be able to play it through matchmaking. But I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to work other than having, especially if you make something with 32 versus 4 and you don't have 36 people. Like, is it going to take forever to matchmake with that and to find people who specifically want to play your game? I don't know.
And on top of that, too, it'll work better if it's a successful game. But if it's not successful, remember we were playing Battlefield 1, I think, and there was just nobody.
No, we were playing Battlefield 4, which is before Battlefield 1.
4, right. Yeah. Which was years ago. So it makes sense why there wouldn't be as many people there, but if we wouldn't be able to play that mode. There's just no way we'd be able to do that. So, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Moving on to the fetch quests for the week, which we have a lot, actually. First is Tencent is buying Sackboy developer Sumo Digital for $1.3 billion, says Andrew Kia at PlayStation Lifestyle. This also includes other properties like Team Sonic Racing, Hood Outlaws and Legends, and more.
Obviously, they don't get the Sackboy trademark and property, though, but they get the company.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they get the company. But, I did say also includes it. Good call, thank you. I was kind of upset about this, not because the whole Tencent thing like we talked about last week, but I thought that these guys made a really good Sackboy game, and I wanted to see them make another one for PlayStation 5, and that's probably not going to happen. Maybe it could. Maybe it could, actually. Tencent might still want to have that relationship. But I hope that's not the result of this.
I don't think enough people played Sackboy.
No, but it was so good. It was so good.
It was great.
It was great. The Coalition might be working on a new IP, which is interesting because you would think Gears 6 would be their next game, but it might not be. Interesting.
All right.
Nintendo says Metroids no longer exist by the time Metroid Dread starts. This is Chris Carter at Destructoid. How can you name this franchise Metroid without any Metroids in it?
Right? It's like when in Lost, when they finally get off the island, we're like, well, fuck, we can't call it Found
Spoilers.
now.
Spoilers. It's been over a decade. You've had time.
Yeah. Matt's done watching it. I think he
Legend-
was the last person that hadn't seen it yet, so we're fine.
I think that Legend of Zelda has a few games without Zelda in it. It could make sense in that way. I heard a cool theory, which is kind of makes sense in the lore of Metroid. At the beginning of Metroid Fusion, I can't remember who said this, so I wish I could give them credit, but just know it's 100% not my theory. At the beginning of Metroid Fusion, you get like attacked by these things called X-Parasites, and in order to heal you, they like inject you with the DNA of the X-Parasites, and then you fuse into the suit, and that's what makes the fusion suit. So you're kind of like part Samus, part like Parasite X. People do that with Metroids, and like you have to get injected with Metroid DNA for some reason, and then Samus is the last Metroid, and that's what kind of continues the Metroid name going
it's like
forward.
The Last Jedi.
It's like The Last Jedi, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that would be kind of cool, because ultimately it doesn't matter.
They're gonna come back.
At all.
Metroids are gonna come back. Otherwise, they wouldn't have continued naming it this, and Nintendo would not have specifically told everyone they're extinct by the time this game comes out. They're coming back somehow.
Cozy Bear made a good point when I was talking to him on Friday, which was that Kingdom Hearts 3 was like, it's the end of this, arc of the story, and like it's over now, and he was kind of saying like it wasn't over by the time of that. Like they're clearly going to keep going on with this plot line. There's probably something similar to that, but I'm just excited, Chad. I just want to talk about it. Any excuse to talk about it, I'm there for it. Speaking of excited, opposite, not excited. Skull and Bones exceptionally troubled, but won't be canceled. Report says. Rachel Kazer at GameRanks says,
"Why? Why aren't you canceling it?"
So they apparently have a contract. They're getting like some sort of subsidy from the government in Singapore, but it requires that they finish the game and release it.
Oh no!
So they don't have a choice and they have to. Which that makes so much sense because I'm like, the game doesn't look interesting. It doesn't look like there's anything worth continuing for. I've never been impressed by the gameplay.
Ubisoft put out plenty of stinkers, as we learned from Game on Game Show about a month ago. Like, they've got plenty of stinkers. Just put this one out as it is right now, and it won't tarnish your brand.
Yeah, it won't tarnish the brand. Although, who knows? Their brand could already be tarnished.
Yeah.
Yeah, just release it. I agree. Something else I was going to say, but I forgot it. It probably doesn't matter. Rumor. Haven Studios' PS5 exclusive is online game as service title, says Chandler Wood at PlayStation Lifestyle. It's a rumor. We don't know for sure. We've kind of heard this from Sony. I think they said they wanted to get more into multiplayer.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah, I'm curious what they do. PlayStation 5 owners can get a 6-month trial of Apple TV Plus, says Eric Van Allen of Destructoid. This is for new and existing subscribers, except if you use Apple One. Other than that.
But Apple One is already a super discounted version of it anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you are curious, now that if you're one of those people who like hasn't had Apple TV Plus before, and this is going to be the first time you get it, go to my Twitter. I have a big thread of like, these are all the things you should watch now, starting with Ted Lasso, because season 2 just started this week, so you should go watch all of those things. I just
watched it today, the first episode, and it was great. Awesome. It was so good. It was so good. Earl, goodbye, Earl. Not a spoiler. It's the name of the first episode. Yeah, I think this is a big deal. I think for Apple, because I don't know how successful Apple TV Plus has been for them compared to how successful they wanted it to be. Because they kept extending the free trials, and now they're doing this. I think this is a smart move though, because in the case of Netflix at least, like PlayStation has been one of the primary places that people watch Netflix. So maybe Apple's trying to get into that now too. So that makes sense. That makes sense. Get those people. Speaking of the PlayStation and the PlayStation Pluses, PlayStation Plus August 2021 lineup includes Hunter's Arena Legends, BVZ Battle for Neighborville, that's Plants vs. Zombies,
PVZ, yeah.
and Tennis World Tour says Zermenicon at PlayStation Lifestyle, and all of those games are brought to you by Games with Gold, because that's a garbage month.
Yeah,
it is a Games with Gold month.
What goes up must come down. They've had quite a few like blockbuster months in a row.
It's mostly blockbuster months, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of a stinker month. But like, they do so well all the time, I'm not complaining.
You know what though? Also, like, I've had years of Xbox Live games with gold that I've just like, I don't even bother to go to the store page to redeem it. But these, I'll still be like, boop, yeah, I'll take Tennis World Tour 2 and never play it.
The only one I think I haven't done was MLB The Show. I think, was that this year? Did MLB The Show at some point? Was that recently?
I feel like last year they gave you the previous years, maybe.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I didn't redeem that one because I'm like, I'm never going to play this. There's never going to be a time in my life where I'm like, oh, I suddenly love baseball.
I suddenly love baseball. Let me play this baseball game from 8 years ago.
Yeah. Because in 8 years, I will be a huge fan of baseball. Let's do, hey Siri, remind me, check if I like baseball in 8 years. Final Fantasy 16, yeah, speaking of releasing in 8 years, Final Fantasy 16 reveals new development update. Says Yoshi P comments are translated. This is from I can't get this guy's name. Ayan Agosa. I think that's how you pronounce it. From DualShockers. The English voice, the update is the English voice dubbing is almost done, and then the Japanese dubbing will start after that. I don't know what that means in terms of could it come out next year, or does it mean it's 2023? I don't know. But they're wrapping up the voice dubbing, which seems like they're progressing pretty well, and
I guess that means
maybe a little bit farther than we think, but I don't know.
I guess that means they have a script. It's finalized. They're recording all the voices. So they have a story. They have a script. I have no idea where that falls in the game development cycle. So I don't know if that's like one of the very first things they can do, so they can then animate the rest of the game around that recording. I have no idea.
And they're also saying too in the article that not for every scene, but for some of these scenes, they're also doing the motion capture at the same time, and that the physical actor is the same as the voice actor. They're not like changing it up at all. So that could imply that they still have a lot of work to do on the cutscenes. But it depends. Like, is that the ones they've already done? Are they going to redo the Japanese dubbing with all motion capture again? Or are they just going to change the facial animation after? Like, what does that mean? I'd imagine they probably would just take the motion capture as is and then just capture the Japanese actor's face and like put it on the motion capture for the or
just
maybe
like
that
they did
doesn't
with
work.
Spider-Man.
I have no idea how that works. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right. That actually turned out pretty well. It looked like so.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. I'm excited to see this. Oh, and they're also doing British English. They're not doing like American English. It's like British English because they're doing that kind of medieval kind of fantasy approach. That's kind of cool. That. I'm actually excited for this Final Fantasy, which means I'll start playing it and get to a cat quest and stop playing it. It's probably what's going to happen. But that's all the stories for the week.
Time for Game On Game Show, the game on our gaming show where we play a game called Game On, the gaming show on our game show. Game. Hold on, we're returning to a fan favorite that's been long dead.
Ooh.
We are digging up Video Game Would You Rather.
Yeah.
We've got 3 scenarios here. I don't think any of them get overtly sexual like they're used to, but some of them get kind of wacky a little bit. So here we go. We got 3 scenarios. We'll start with our most tame one, starting with, would you rather know that you can be critically injured 2 times in your life without dying? So imagine you have 3 hearts.
Yeah.
Or
if you go to a car accident, you're not dead.
Exactly, yeah. So you can cheat death twice because you have 3 hearts. Or would you rather know that there are 5 extra lives for you out there in the world somewhere that can save you specifically? So they're not like, hey, there are 5, everyone in the world, go for it. It's like you have 5 extra lives out there specifically for you that can save you from death each time once. But they're incredibly well hidden, and they are hidden all over the globe and require a ton of effort to get them.
So it's really funny. So I heard the first one, and I'm like, I don't need a house that much. So I don't know if I need those 3 critical lives. And then the next one, I'm like, well, I definitely don't need that because I hardly leave the house.
Okay, what if there's a gas leak, your house explodes, or there's an earthquake and it collapses, or...
And I'll have 3 as opposed to having to leave the house and find one really hard one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'll just have those 3. So I'm going to go with the first one.
So you're just going to have those 3 lives. And then you can know, all right, I get 2 heart attacks while I sit here at home. After my second heart attack, then I start thinking, oh shit, what am I going to
do? As opposed to like having a heart attack and then being like, great, now I've had like triple bypass surgery and I have to go to Guam to find a extra life.
You know,
it's not good for my heart to do that.
I started out thinking, the 3 lives is just like, it's good to know that I can survive that, and then I have a time where I can be more cautious. Or I also thought about if I had the 3 hearts, where I would be like, oh, maybe I would take more risks. I would do things knowing that I cannot die right now because I have 2 extra hearts. But then I thought, no, when you play video games, if you get something that's a consumable and you can't get more of it, you just save it all the way to the very end and you never use it, and then it's a waste. So I would spend my whole life waiting till the end, and then I would just accidentally almost die 3 times right before I do die. But then I thought, the 5 extra lives, not only do I get the pleasure of having extra lives, but I also get the challenge. I get the vacation. People are always like, oh, I want to travel. It's like, this literally gives me an excuse to travel so that I can save my life and go travel some more. I think that'd be so much more interesting.
Excuse me.
So that's what I'm going to do.
That's
it's going to force me to go out and see the world. Even if it's like in a nasty sewage grate in Guatemala.
Yeah, that's the tough part for me, is like the world's like the globe-trotting adventure. You're right, like it sounds cool, but I'd be so terrified, like, oh man, like I am in Sudan right now and I don't have any extra lives anymore, and now I'm kind of worried. It's really hot and I'm gonna die of heat exhaustion. Like, I am not feeling good right now. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm gonna go with the first one, but I totally get the globe-trotting adventure aspect of it.
Number 2, would you rather see the world through your eyes like you do today? Like literally first-person perspective through your own eyes. But when you look down, you don't ever get to see your body. The only time you ever see your body is in a reflection.
Okay.
So that's option 1. Option 2, you see the world via a camera that's about 6 feet behind you over your shoulder. But you only ever get to see your back and you don't show up in mirrors. So you have no idea what your face or the front of you looks like, but you get to see yourself from a camera.
I'm going to go with the first one.
Why?
I don't need to look in mirrors. I'll be fine.
The first one, you do have to look in mirrors. That's the only way you can see any part of your body is by looking in a mirror.
But the thing is, like, I don't even really need to do that, and I'd rather just, like, not see myself, honestly. I just don't, like... I'd rather not do that. Because what I mean by that is, like, I don't like to look at my mirror and being like, oh, man, I'm a huge fat ass. Whereas, like, in the second... Like, I can just avoid a mirror. Like, I'm fine. But, like, with the second one, I'll just constantly being like, oh, my God, my ass is fucking huge. And, like, I have no choice but to, like, look at that. So I'm going with the first one. It would
definitely encourage you to do a few more squats, for sure. But I would...
You mean more than zero?
Yes. I think about, like, how difficult it would be to, like, put on your shoes. Or, like, do I have shit on my face when I go into this meeting at work? I don't know. I'd have to ask somebody else to tell me, is there anything on my face? I really can't see it.
That's a good point. Okay, let me... Anecdote.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a good scenario. So I was in school, I would do like the school plays and that kind of stuff. And I was in Peter Pan, I played Smee, and they made all the, the pirates look dirty, so they kind of put like some face paint on us, and it was like, brown paint to like make it look like we had dirt in our face. And then after the performance, I just totally forgot that I had the paint on to a Chinese restaurant. And here I am, this white kid with brown face paint on.
No.
He just like probably looked really, really horrible. And I wish that I had been able to look in a mirror and say, get this paint off, because in the context of a Peter Pan show, it makes complete sense. In the context of I'm in a Chinese restaurant and no one knows who I am or what's happening, it doesn't look very good. Yeah, you know what? That's...
Although,
yeah,
hold on.
I'll go with the second one now.
I think I've led us astray, because in option 1, you can see your face in a mirror, but only in a mirror. In option 2, you can never see your face. You don't show up in mirrors. You only see yourself from behind. I led us astray a little bit. But the thing about like tying your shoes without being able to see your feet or something like that, or like while I'm cutting vegetables to prepare my food, all I see is the knife, and I could be cutting off my fingers. I have no idea. That could be really tough.
So I think I can be fine in those scenarios for two reasons. One, I can figure out how to put my shoe on without seeing it. I can feel around being like foot going in the hole of shoe. Like I know what that feels like. And then with the cutting thing, when I cut vegetables when I'm cooking dinner, I already kind of like press the knife against my fingertips and then slowly move my fingers back to like know where I'm chopping. So it's kind of always pressing against anyway, but never in the line of like being chopped by the finger. So I could feel that, and I think I could get away with it. And I don't like chop vigorously where I would cut my hand. I chop kind of slow. So like I would be like, oh, I can feel that hitting my fingernails. It's definitely going to cut my finger. I should let up a little bit. I think I'd be fine. There.
I think I just kind of, I really want to see the world in a third person perspective. Even if it means I never see what my face looks like. I just want to see. But I would have to start buying graphic t-shirts with the graphics on the back. Or just wearing everything backwards. Because if I buy something like, man, that's a really cool jacket. And I just got to zip it up backwards. Yeah. All right, last one. Would you rather... This one's all about the versatility of next-gen consoles. Would you rather stand upright for the rest of your life, only being able to lean on things but never sit or lay down? Or you have to lay flat the rest of your life, never being able to stand or sit again? That doesn't mean that you're on bed rest, because both of them are able to be vertical or horizontal.
Oh. Okay, gotcha.
So if you choose lay flat, that does not mean that you're bedridden. It just means that everywhere you go, you have to be horizontal. But if you stand upright, you never get to lay down or sit down ever again. You have to be standing up, or you have to lean on things.
For back health, the first option is definitely the better one.
You think so? I feel like that would put a lot of compression on your spine.
But laying flat in your back all the time is not good for it either.
Well, you could lay on your tummy.
That would sound uncomfortable.
I know that like my legs are gonna get tired, and I'm gonna want to like build a rig that suspends me from the ceiling or something like that. Like a baby swing where you just put your legs in it. Like I'm gonna want to build that so quickly after standing upright for a while. But also, the world is not meant for people to lay down in it. So you're not going to be able to lay down in a car and drive.
I was going to say,
scoot around on a skateboard or a gurney on your belly. That's tough.
Yeah, I think the laying on the belly thing would be more problematic because it's like, oh, I'm going to go see a movie. I need to buy the seat in front of me too, so I can lay across both seats because there's no way that like there'd be all these weird things where like I'm getting on a plane. Like, how many seats on the plane do I buy? Could I even lay across? Because I'm a tall dude. I couldn't lay across an aisle of seats without getting my legs or face in the middle of the aisle.
Well, the flight attendants won't let you stand up during parts of the plane either. They're gonna be like, we can't take off while you're standing, sir. Like, let me just lean against the bathroom door.
You could fly on military planes only, where you have to like hold on to the grip. Like, you have options. There. But even like you mentioned early cars, like driving, like you would never be allowed to drive like that ever until fully automated vehicles come out, or fully autonomous vehicles come out. Yeah.
Are there things like wheelchairs, but for people who have to lay down, other than gurneys or hospital beds and?
Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be perfectly flat. You couldn't be like in a reclined position, right?
You couldn't be in a position where either your butt or your feet are supporting your weight. So you could be reclined as long as your whole body's. But if a large percentage of your weight is being supported only by your sits bones or by your feet, that's a no-no.
Yeah, I'll take the standing. Also, too, for like working and jobs and that kind of stuff, like, I could just get a standing desk. They couldn't get, like, a desk that, like, is completely horizontal with everything glued to it so it, like, works properly. Like,
what if you go to work and you choose the laying down option and everyone's, like, gathered around the table and you're army crawling into the office on the floor and you're just, like, laying on the floor by the table. Everyone, let me talk you through this PowerPoint.
You're like,
or God, how do you use the bathroom?
I think you could get a bathroom where you could lay across the toilet, but peeing would be hard. You have to, like, push your penis down.
In many parts of
lay
Asia,
on your stomach and you just...
In many parts of Asia, their public toilets are just holes in the ground. Like when I went to the Shanghai airport, you go to the bathroom there, and it's just two little grooves next to a hole. So you put your feet in the grooves, and you just squat over the hole and poop. So you could keep that same idea, but then just, like, slide your penis into the hole, or flip over and slide your butthole over the hole. You'd get so gross from the ground, though.
I'm thinking about going to the whole job thing. I was thinking about a job interview where they're like, tell me what your strengths and weaknesses. Like, well, weakness, I'm always laying down. It's a huge obstacle and problem for me. And also eating. Eating would be kind of dangerous if you're laying down all the time.
Oh, yeah. If you're laying on your back, it's really difficult to drink things, especially, like, from a cup.
Yep.
Like that.
Yeah.
But then eating?
You have to have beer hats all the time. Just, like, do it that way. But it would have to be...
It would have to be a beer hat, because the beer has to be standing straight, like, perpendicular to the earth. So it would have to be a beer mask where the beer is on your face. I think I'm going to definitively say this for the both of us, because I feel like this is objectively true at this point. You would have to rework everything in your life to so many degrees laying flat that, like, standing would be inconvenient, but there are already things in society that you could work around. You wouldn't have to change so much of your day-to-day. And you would ultimately, give it, like, a few months to a year, you'd get used to it. Your legs would get stronger doing it all the time. I think that's the definitive way to do this. Yeah. I was also, one last thing about, like, laying down all the time. You'd grow to really love Snuggies. Because you wouldn't have to, like, figure out how to wiggle your way into clothes and pants and stuff like that. But you'd just be able to just, like, throw your arms up and drop a Snuggie on your body.
And I wouldn't want to look like an asshole, so I'm not going to get a Snuggie. That's crazy.
You're just naked all the time. Not only do you never stand up and you slither into the office, but you're naked the whole time, too.
You go to Activision, you're like, you're hired, you're perfect for this place. Naked and slithering on the floor.
Brought it full circle. That's it for Game on Game Show. That is it for episode 219 of Respawn Aim Fire, the Kick-Ass Irreverent Gaming Podcast. Several announcements. One, you have a job, go play Katana Zero. I don't give a fuck if you're a patron or not. Play it. We're going to talk about that in about a weekish. And number two, if you would like to determine what we play next, we go to patreon.com/respawn-aim-fire. Support us at $1. You get to do that. I'm going to be putting out that poll ASAP. Number three, Holden, as he announced last episode, is pursuing game development, which means he'll be stepping away from our show, which means we are in search of another co-host. That'll be coming up very shortly. So if you're interested in being a permanent member of Affable Idiots, please reach out to us on Twitter or email affableidiots@gmail.com or respawningfire@gmail.com. We are accepting interest. I'm not going to say applications because I don't have a form for you to fill out or anything like that. Like, that would be nice and helpful, but I don't have that. But yeah, if you're interested, I would love to have, like, obviously, if you've been a guest on the show, then we know what our rapport is like, but I would also like to, like, talk to you about your ideas for what you want the show to be and make it your own a little bit and what the time commitment and things like that would be. So if you're interested, or if you know somebody, dear God, if you know somebody, all the people I know who are good at podcasting already have their own podcast. So if you know somebody and you have connections to wider circles of people, please have them reach out. And our last thing that you have to do is... oh, yes. Remember, in anticipation of Holden's last episode, which is it next week or the week after?
Next week. This is the penultimate episode.
if you're listening to this when we release it on Tuesday, you have only a handful of days left to draw your picture of Holden.
Oh, yeah, that's
Remember,
right. I forgot about that.
DM me. Last week, I got a picture from someone, and I was like, that's funny. I mean, it's a funny picture. I'm glad you sent it to me. I don't know why you sent it to me, though. And then, like, a day later, he told me about it. I was like, oh, fuck, I forgot I asked people to do that. So I just thought one of our friends just sent me a funny picture of you. I was like, okay. I mean, he probably wouldn't find that offensive, but I'm glad you chose to send it to me. Anyway, so yes, go out and make a picture of Holden, whether it's drawing in the notes app on your phone or photoshopping something. Make a picture of Holden, whatever that means to you, and DM it to me on Twitter at Chad Michaelis.
And no restrictions. What if Holden speaking here? The butt of the joke right here. No, just go for it. Go for it.
Somebody deep fake him on some porno.
I mean, that sounds hot.
All right, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, here's our usual sign off. That sounds hot.